You're listening to the Digest This podcast, and I'm your host, Bethany Cameron. PepsiCo is announcing that they are coming out with a prebiotic soda, and just FYI, they bought Poppy, so PepsiCo owns the Poppy drink now. And Nutella maker Ferrero just bought up cereal giant Kellogg for $3.1 billion. That's billion with a B. So there's a lot of things happening in the food world, and I think a lot of us aren't even aware, but I'm here to kind of break it down, if you want to even call it that, and just let you know what's happening because you may be shocked. I'm not a fan of most protein bars. They contain fillers, stevia, and or monk fruit or weird sweeteners like agave or brown rice syrup, and not to mention hard to digest ingredients such as seeds. And don't even get me started on all the bars that contain inulin, aka prebiotics, claiming it will help your gut, but inulin actually causes gut upsets and bloating. And if you do find a clean protein bar, the protein content is typically under 12 grams, and it's not even a complete protein. Enter Equip Foods' new grass-fed protein bars. This is the first grass-fed beef protein bar that actually tastes like dessert, delivering 20 grams of complete protein, 9 grams of healthy fats, and contains ingredients like colostrum to help support your gut. No whey, milk solids, seed oils, lecithins, fiber syrups, or gluten. These bars are third-party tested for heavy metals, microplastics, glyphosate, and other contaminants commonly found in other protein bars. Equip Foods has 2 different flavors, chocolate and mixed berry. And the icing on the cake is that neither flavors melt. So you can pack them in your kid's lunchbox, your own lunch, toss them in your gym or work bag, and keep some in the car for those emergencies we all are too familiar with when we are stuck in traffic. There's no natural flavors, no stevia or monk fruit, flavored with real wholesome ingredients and sweetened with dates and honey to provide you with the energy, protein, and brain power without the bloat. If you go to equipfoods.com and use my code Little Sipper, you will get a whopping 20% off your entire order. So stock up on their other beef protein powders and collagen too. Again, go to equipfoods.com/Little Sipper or use code Little Sipper, LILSIPPER at checkout to receive 20% off. Okay, ever since Siete got bought out by PepsiCo, everyone on the internet just went crazy and wild. But I think a lot of you guys may not even realize this happens all the time. You know, the pasta sauce brand Rouse, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, they got bought out by Campbell's a few years ago. And of course, Kraft, we all know Kraft, right? Kraft cheese. They have the ketchup. Primal Kitchen, they're owned by Kraft. So many of the health food brands that we all are familiar with, they're mostly owned by big, giant corporations. Now, I know that Nutella, or the maker of Nutella, Ferrero, but I think we all are more familiar with Nutella, the company that owns them just bought out Kellogg's. So what does this even mean? And I know that Kellogg's and Nutella and Ferrero, they're not really, quote, health food brands, but neither is PepsiCo. And now Pepsi is trying to make a prebiotic soda right after they purchased Poppy, which in my opinion, Poppy isn't even a health drink anyways. So they're trying to get into the health space because they know that people are wanting to be healthier, make better choices for themselves and their family. But what we don't realize is that the same companies that own all the foods that we really don't like, all the junk, they also own a lot of the, quote, health food brands. And over time, they do tend to change ingredients. And I think we're all aware that Siete's tortillas and their chips, those ingredients have been changed, and it would not surprise me if they continue to. So why do these big brands buy out all of these smaller health food brands. Well, I just mentioned, of course, they want to get into the health space. And if PepsiCo were to create something truly healthy, I bet a lot of people wouldn't purchase it because they knew it was created by Pepsi. So instead, because don't get me wrong, they have the money, all these big brands, Nestle, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Ferrero, all of these companies have the money to make a healthy option, right? We all know that. There are multi-billion dollar companies. But the reason they're buying out these smaller health food brands is because everyone already knows them. Everyone loves these health food brands because, one, they're family owned, or at least they started to be family owned or small business. And two, they already have trust within the consumer. So they try to go under the radar, buy out these brands, and hope that nobody notices and still have those loyal consumers. I recently did a post on my Digest This podcast page, which if you're not following the Digest This podcast on Instagram, definitely give it a follow, because I post not just stuff about the podcast here, but I post like health stuff, and I'm kind of switching gears from my Little Sipper page. Little Sipper, it will be recipes, healthy recipes, of course. And then the Digest This podcast will be more so educational posts. Anyways, so I did a post on the Digest This podcast. It's at the Digest This podcast. And it was about PepsiCo and all the brands that PepsiCo owns. Not all of them, but the health food brands that we are basically familiar with. I shared that Poppy is owned by PepsiCo, obviously Siete. And I asked people, I was like, which company shocked you? Like, who did you think was still privately owned? And interestingly enough, people were saying they were shocked by Siete. And this was a very recent post. And so still people are not aware, despite all of the uproar that Siete got when PepsiCo bought them out. Now, also Pure Encapsulations, if you buy their supplements, they're owned by Pepsi. I mean, so many brands. Health Warrior, I don't know if you eat those bars. I think Health Warrior bars were at one time clean, and I would not touch those bars today. So that just goes to show. And I think it was Naked Juice. They got bought out a long time ago. And now they actually just sold, I think in 2021, Pepsi sold Naked Juice to another firm. And so they're no longer owned by PepsiCo. So all of this to say is that things are happening under the radar. We all know that Simple Mills got bought out by Flour Foods. And if you don't know who Flour Foods is, it's the maker of the Bimbo bread or the Wonder Bread that you guys are nostalgically familiar with. So White Wonder Bread now owns Simple Mills, and that happened earlier in 2025. And again, now recently, the American giant cereal Kellogg and Italian candy giant Ferrero have struck a sweet deal worth $3.1 billion. So the family-owned maker, and I say that in air quotes here, of Nutella, they have agreed to buy the iconic American maker of Fruit Loops and Frosted Flakes. So combining two of the world's most storied sweet brands, things are in the melting pot and are in the works. So if you think about it, I also want to give you some context here. So WK Kellogg Co. is different from also just Kellogg's. So they actually separated because Mars, the company Mars that makes M&Ms, that company, I know it's confusing. That Mars bought out a portion of the Kellogg's company. So they separated, okay? And then it became WK Kellogg Co. and Kellogg's. So they no longer. So one part of Kellogg's just was mostly cereals. The other part, they were Pop-Tarts. And if you guys are familiar with RX Bar, they got acquired by Kellogg for $600 million back in 2018. And they, of course, claim it's a no BS bar. But I think we all are familiar, they have natural flavors, and which is not listed on the front of the package. And now their RX Bar, they're in Trader Joe's even. They're in everywhere. I mean, every grocery store carries them. And this is another reason why you see these, quote, smaller brands going into Costco, going into Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. I mean, they're everywhere. They're even in gas stations. Like, all of these brands are becoming more available. However, the reason they're becoming more available, most likely, not all the time, but most likely, is because they got bought out by Nestle or Kellogg's or PepsiCo, etc. And these big box brands have the ability to get into gas stations, to get into convenience stores, and to get into literally every single store out there. And that's why, okay? So you may be asking, even I get asked all the time about Bethany's Pantry and my protein powder, like, hey, how come you can't get into Whole Foods or Sprouts? How come you can't get into Costco? We want it, all these things. Well, there's a reason. And we've been trying to get into all of these big stores like Sprouts and Whole Foods and Costco for years, you guys. But this is probably another episode for another time. But it costs so much money to get into these stores. Like, for example, I'm just going to say it. For example, Sprouts grocery stores, you have to pay Sprouts. Obviously, you have to pay them for shelf space. You have to also pay them to be in their ad, their circulatory ad. And it's not a choice. You have to be in their ad. And then guess what? You have to discount your product so many times a year. And the company like Bethany's Pantry would take the hit. The grocery store doesn't get less money from the sales, I think, and that goes across the board for all sales in grocery stores. If you see a sale at a grocery store, the grocery store isn't discounting from what they get in revenue. The brand is getting less money, but they have to discount it so many times a year. And it is so expensive. On top of that, when you first get into a store, you have to do demos. It costs about 50 grand per store. Let me say that again, 50 grand per store, at least for Sprouts, at least. I can't say it for every store, to demo. So if we had, let's just say, 5 stores, okay? That's a lot of money. You do the math, okay? And there's obviously more than 5 Sprouts across the United States. So it is dang expensive. And then I'm not even going to get to Costco. That's, again, another episode for another time. But it's expensive. And so, but these big box brands, they can afford to get into them because they have all the money in the world to just pay these companies and brands and do sales and be on end caps. Again, that's another thing. If you want to be on an end cap in the grocery store, you have to pay them. That costs money. I can get bloated after a meal, and gas builds up with severe pain if I'm not super careful in what I eat, or heck, even if I eat a super clean meal, but I eat too fast, or when I'm stressed, and emotions alone can cause that feeling of fullness and unbearable stomach pain. So I always have in my arsenal Peak Tea's organic ginger digestion elixir to help de-bloat and soothe my tummy. It's honestly nature's remedy when it comes to digestive upsets. This elixir is a combination of ginger, mint, licorice root, lemon peel, and orange, all designed and proven to help stomach discomfort when we need it the most, without any sweeteners, fillers, flavoring agents, and to top it off, Peak Tea triple toxin screens all their teas, ensuring there's no mold, glyphosate, heavy metals, or contaminants. I highly recommend getting their ginger digestion elixir to keep on hand, and use code DIGEST at checkout to receive a discount while you're at it. Head on over to peaklife.com/digest and use code DIGEST at checkout to receive a discount on all their organic teas, including their ginger digestion elixir. Now, in regards to Ferrero buying Kellogg, in case you didn't know, they are like one of the biggest candy giants, right? So they have everything from, I'm sure you're familiar with the Ferrero chocolate. I think that's very common here. But, and Nutella, of course, that's another big one that they're known for. But I bet you didn't know that Ferrero chocolate also owns Blue Bunny ice cream, Baby Ruth candy bar, 100 grand candy bar. They own Butterfinger Blue Ribbon ice cream, Crunch bar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Crunch bar. They own Halo Top. Did you know that? Halo Top was once a small brand. I remember them reaching out to me actually many, many years ago when they were just starting out and they wanted me to promote their ice cream. And it was like the new ice cream on the market, right? So now Ferrero owns Halo Top. They own Keebler, like the Keebler cookies. You probably didn't know a lot of these things. Tic Tac, those little Tic Tacs, they own that, Raisinets, and so many more. And so now they're getting into the cereal industry with Kellogg's. And so it's too early to tell what's going to happen with this merge or buyout, whether they are going to merge into one company, but it will still be under the Ferrero name. Again, this is all new as of this month. And of course, I'm recording this in July. So July, I want to say July 10th, that's when the rumors came out that Ferrero was going to be buying cereal giant Kellogg's, but now it's confirmed. So time will tell what's going to happen. Obviously, the American diet is very sad. That's why they call it the SAD diet, standard American diet. And with these two not so good for you companies joining together, I don't think it's going to get better. And I'm sure they're going to make some Nutella cereal if they haven't already, right? It's really, really sad, no pun intended. And so again, all of these things, like I wanted to talk about PepsiCo again too. Now in November 2025, so it hasn't even happened yet. This is when PepsiCo will be releasing and making their prebiotic soda for sale. And I say prebiotic, and again, air quotes, because who knows what's going to be in it. They haven't disclosed the ingredients in this prebiotic soda. So in November 2025, on Black Friday, they already have the date. It's the day after Thanksgiving. They're going to make this soda available. Perfect. Right after Thanksgiving, right before Christmas, everyone is already probably loosening their belts a little bit, and they claim that it's going to be low sugar, low calorie. And we all know there's always a catch when you hear those words, because low sugar, no calorie, unless you're eating, celery sticks, it's probably not good for you. So they're adding stuff to make it that way. And of course, it's most likely going to be chemicals, because what doesn't have calories are basically just chemicals. It's interesting because they recently just bought out Poppy earlier this year in 2025. And despite them owning Poppy, which claims to be a probiotic soda, now they're creating a prebiotic soda. And they have the means to do that, obviously. So this is just a little heads up about flour foods, buying, Simple Mills. And I hope Simple Mills doesn't change the ingredients. However, my podcast producer and I were just talking, and he sent me a text, and he was eating some of their crackers, the Simple Mill cheese crackers. And he's like, these just don't taste the same, Bethany. And so I had an old box of the Simple Mills crackers still in my pantry. And I was like, well, let me see if I have like the old version and look up, because once they change the ingredients, they change it on their website, and you can't really see what the original ingredients were. And so then it leaves you wondering. But thankfully, I had an old package, and I compared my package to my producer's package, and they did in fact change the ingredients. And they added whole milk, and it was another like milk product that they didn't have in the original crackers. And so I think it was cream. Yeah, cream and milk. So again, it's just a good heads up to always be checking, always stay up to date. And of course, always be listening to the Digest This podcast to keep you informed, and my newsletters. Every Friday, I come out with newsletters with new food finds that I find healthy and interesting. I share product recalls, food recalls from the week. and of course, recipes and things like that. So again, check the ingredients, you guys. Be on the alert for new stuff happening. I don't see things getting better. I mean, I'm thankful that this new administration is doing something about the dyes and certain chemicals in our food and et cetera. But these big brands are making loopholes. And if they can't add red dye 40, guess what? They're just going to add another type of dye or another type of chemical and make it that much more addicting. I mean, we all know now, in case you didn't know, brands are creating GLP-1 resistant snacks because they're finding out people are eating less of these snacks because they're on GLP-1 drugs. And again, it's not that I agree with that, but people are, okay? That's just a matter of fact. And so now they're creating GLP-1 resistant snacks to oversee I don't even know because it's not like I'm a scientist, but they're creating these chemical snacks so that people will still be addicted to them despite them being on GLP-1 drugs. And again, it's all about the money. They all want your money. And in case you didn't know, before I close, Big Sugar, right? Big Sugar that makes the bleached sugar cane sweetener that we don't want in our food. They also make stevia. They also make monk fruit. They're on both ends of the spectrum here. Bayer, who owns Monsanto, that's spraying glyphosate. Guess what? Bayer owns the glyphosate company Monsanto, right? Bayer also produces the drugs to help people get rid of cancer. Okay, let that sink in. So they are making money on both ends. They're poisoning us and then they're trying to cure us with their drugs that they promote. So again, I am gonna close it here, but this is just a little wake up, look behind the scenes, look at who's owning who. And then if you know who really owns what, it will all make sense. Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To check out more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com, and to email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.
Are you ready to rock middle age? I'm Dr. Tina Moore, Gen X truth teller and holistic physician. On the Dr. Tina Show, one of Apple Podcast's top alternative health shows, I share what actually works for metabolic health, hormones, and strength, backed by decades of clinical results, not trends. From loving the gym and hitting your protein goals to peptides and microdosing GLP-1s, it's all done the right way, not the hype way. Because menopause doesn't have to suck if you're fit. New episodes every Thursday, produced by Drake Peterson and Wellness Loud.